Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our show, Lifestyle with Dr. Mobi. I'm Dr. Mobi. Today we have an excellent guest. We have Michelle, and she does a lot of coaching on mental health and health. So let's welcome Michelle.
Thank
Michelle,
you.
thank you for taking your time coming to our show. So tell us about yourself. What do you do normally?
So I'm a leadership and life coach, and I specialize in working with families who are facing mental health challenges. So more specifically, I coach family members of people with severe mental illness and addictions,
Mhm.
helping them find balance and build resilience. And I also work with individuals who may have a milder form of some kind of mental health challenge. It could be depression or anxiety or ADHD, and helping them learn tools to empower them.
Mhm.
Often in our society, we think that it's just you take the medication if that's what you're on, and that should make you all better. But really, there are many lifestyle choices that we can make to help our mental health as well. So I teach a lot of tools to my clients as well. I teach a mindfulness for mental health or emotional resilience course, because I know mindfulness is extremely helpful in creating that mind-body connection and really helping us be in command of our own mental health.
Oh wow! I mean, that's a fantastic work you're doing. So, congratulations on keeping up with that.
Thank you.
Also, tell us. There is, I think, a lot of things which is probably very common cross culture and different cultures. One is mental health. That's a big thing. That if anybody has mental health, it's not like you have flu or cold that you'll go to doctor. That is still considered and different cultures also still the same. It has improved, of course, but where do you think, do you see that also a problem still?
Yeah, stigma is a huge issue now. I mean, it has always been, and while there have been some improvements, I think I know many of us see social media as being good and bad. Some of
Yeah.
the positive things that have come out of social media is a lot more awareness
Mhm.
around mental health issues, around suicide. More people are talking about it, like you and I are having this conversation, but there is still quite a bit of stigma. I think there's this notion that we in our culture and society we see I guess busy as being a strength. Being burnt out is something good because that means that you've worked hard, and it's all about just go go go. And so we often see mental health or mental illness as a weakness, and we judge it that way. And so people often don't either want to look at what's happening with themselves, because maybe they might be judging themselves as weak, or they're afraid of other people judging them. But it's unfortunately it's creating a big problem, particularly now with the pandemic, because the reality is none of us are immune. We're all feeling it in our mental health in one way or another. Even those of us who were the healthiest people, how
Mhm.
can we not, with all this unknown that's happening, and potentially the second wave, moving into the second wave, there's so much fear, there's anxiety, there's isolation. There are so many things that are going to make existing problems worse, and create problems for people who might otherwise have been previously healthy.
Mhm. And that is so true that, despite advances in, technology, everything, and definitely there are better medications now and approach, but still it all comes down to also, realization and self-help, family support and so forth.
Yeah.
That is still utmost important. And especially with mental health. Also, I think we still have probably the suicide awareness month, right? We still
Yes, yeah,
so
September.
September. So tell us why suicide is still the kind of biggest problem so far in the mental health.
Yeah, well, I can speak from my own personal experience. My husband died by suicide 14 years ago, and he had been living with, he had bipolar disorder and a form of schizophrenia. And unfortunately, by the time he had his diagnosis, it had progressed quite far.
Mhm.
And so, he lost hope. He didn't. You know he they were doing the medication trials, nothing was working. He was really just getting worse, and I believe he thought this was the best thing to do for the family, because I mean, he had said to me at some point, there are voices in my head that are telling me to do things that are, could hurt the family, and I don't want to do that. And he was just in so much pain. um, but after he passed away, the family decided, let's say he died in an accident. We didn't tell the truth about what happened. And I know for us, we were in a community that didn't talk about mental illness, certainly didn't talk about suicide.
Mhm.
And so, we all kind of went into our heads around, the shame and, the fear of the judgment that, is somebody going to think that we didn't do enough? Or somehow is this our fault, or what could we have done differently? And so all of that ended up, causing us to decide that we wanted to say he died in an accident. And I carried that secret actually for more than 10 years.
Mhm.
And it ended up, of course, impacting my own mental health. I was not able to grieve the way that I needed to grieve a suicide. I was pretending to grieve an accident, which, when you're in that kind of space of like, I don't even know how to talk about this, you just don't talk.
Mhm.
And then I had anxiety as well, always worrying, is somebody going to find out the truth? Am I going to be exposed?
Mhm.
And my kids at the time were 7 and 4,
Mhm.
and I rationalized it that, I don't know how this happened. I don't know how to explain it to myself. I don't know how to explain it to my children. And then I
Mhm.
was in fear all the time that somebody might tell my kids. So I know there are many, many people who are still of that belief.
Mhm.
And, I hear about it every time I speak publicly about my story. Somebody's always coming up to me and telling me about a suicide that they're hiding, or it could be a mental illness. Somebody had said to me once, my son is in a special school, or he was in some kind of treatment center. And she said, but everyone thinks that he's away at school. So they weren't talking about that either. And there are so many of us that are hiding this, because we're afraid of the judgment
Mhm.
from other people. So
Mhm.
it's still quite a problem.
Well, thank you for sharing, and sorry for, I'm sure it still hurts to remember all that years have gone by, but it takes a lot of courage from a person like you to come up with and share and be guide. I am sure when you see other stories and other people you have helped and touched, it means a lot, right? It probably
Yeah.
gets you uh, really lot of peace of mind, and what you were looking for. And that is there are multiple layers in this. That is true. If yes, if maybe at that time you have thought, okay, death by accident is also death, and death by suicide is death, so that too equalize. But the cause is I think the human brain is very smart, and it needs kind of proper explanation and logic to get the grief out or get the process. Even even when we talk about suicide, yes, that is just one thing, but what led to, what caused it, what was that's human nature, and I think we always dissect and go in the details of everything, and then try to rationalize our understanding based on how much we can understand, right? So a lot of people, I'm sure it probably was very hard then and still, but takes a lot of courage to do that. I can't imagine, that anybody going through that, and with family, the family, I'm sure it affected your family in also different ways, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it really did. And, there are some family members that are still, not talking about it.
Mhm.
And, that don't, because they're still working through their stuff. And, we all have our own path and our own journey. And for me, I reached a point where I couldn't live in that kind of fear and just lying to myself and lying to others. I was isolating myself. It was so unhealthy, and I knew that it was because of choices that I was making, and so I had to do my work and then realize, like, and even look at the shame that I was feeling. Like, why was I judging myself, that I would think other people would judge me as well? And so much of it I had to do the healing work and find compassion for myself and love myself and say, like, he was ill. His brain was not functioning in a healthy way, and he died from the illness. It's not like me walking around, living my life. Then suddenly I say, oh, you know what? I think I'm going to take my life. Like, people, I think, don't realize the place a human has to get to make that decision. That, to override our survival instinct, which is so strong, like, for that to go away and us to make that choice. It's a pretty advanced, progressive place to be, in the pain, in their suffering, in their illness. And for me to come to that acceptance
Mhm.
and say, okay, I'm not judging myself, I'm not blaming myself. This was an illness. And when I could let go of that, then it didn't matter what other people thought, because I wasn't judging it.
Hmm. And then, that brings a very important discussion is, into the context of suicide. So suicide is one thing, suicide attempt is also another thing. And then, whether response with men and female both are, how they handle that is also totally different. So a lot of men
Mm-hmm.
will come in my practice to, I used to do primary care, and I just do sleep, but we had a lot of patients coming in. They say, especially guys, they say, I'm mad, they will never say I'm depressed. Say,
Yeah.
I'm mad. So that's kind of gives you a notion, okay, there's something wrong in that, but they'll never say, I'm very depressed. So it's how they express that. For
Yeah.
females, it was more direct. Yes, but I had to kind of convince them to talk and share, and then sure, they would do that. So those two sexes have total different. And then the suicide attempt and actual um, suicide, unfortunately, more men end up doing, or
Yeah.
and also I have seen over the years that many times they will see provider, and still they would lie to them. So over the years I heard also perfect, patient, we knew had mental illness, we talked about, we sat with everything, family, everything, still lied to us, and went out and turned on this car and just killed himself. So
Mm.
there's nothing, sometimes you can't help them, they're
Yeah.
just that. I wish there were ways, and we are probably we can do better. And I think my guess is probably family support, is more effective, far more. but
Yeah.
still mental illness, treatment of mental illness, and that brings another recent incident, celebrity wise. I think it's probably going to be out in books too, that they were in mental illness undiagnosed, neurological conditions,
Hmm.
and that is about hallucinations. That's about those. And if you say that the person has, so the proper treatment is also very important, because the mental health, it is a big description. It has a lot of parts to it. Depression, we have dementia, mix of that, and that those are very difficult to treat. And then so the proper treatment is very important. What I was trying to say, same for bipolar, schizophrenia. They are very hard to treat, and so if you don't optimize things, unfortunately people can. And recently celebrity, yeah, I'm sure you were reading that um, he was having hallucinations about, and then ended up taking his life. I mean, he had all the resources. So it brings an important question: is that what in the mental diagnosis we can correct it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many systemic changes need to be
Yeah.
to be made. I think to help people. Um, yeah, on every different level, and right down to just even talking about it and normalizing it and recognizing that we all have have these feelings. We all will sometimes have these thoughts,
Mhm.
and looking out for one another too, not being afraid to ask people how they are and how are you doing, and checking in and going there. Sometimes we're like, oh well, that's none of my business, and it's like, but if this is somebody that you love, then ask. And I agree with you. I know that the system, just from the clients that I work with, the family members, and seeing what they're going through with their loved ones who have a severe mental illness, the system has not changed in the
Mhm.
14 years since I had my experience. And I think things really need to shift.
Mhm.
With my husband, a couple of weeks before he passed away, he was already in psychosis at this point, and not thinking clearly. And there was one night where I was really concerned for him, and I had him taken to the hospital and admitted. Here in Canada, we call it Form 1.
Okay.
Um, and I know in the US you have a different term for it when somebody's admitted into the hospital against their will, or
Yeah,
it's,
three or
yeah,
two. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So and it was a Friday evening when I had him admitted, and it was interesting because I didn't think he was trying to commit to complete suicide or attempt suicide. I thought he might actually just accidentally hurt himself or somebody else, and he talked his way out of it. And he said to them, like, no, my wife is angry at me, I would never hurt myself, I'm fine. And they let him go, and they called me and they said, sorry, we can't keep him against his will. He said he's fine. And I said, wait till Monday morning, he has psychiatric records. Call his psychiatrist, he's been in treatment, he's in treatment.
Mhm.
Ask the doctor what they think,
Mhm.
because they know. And they didn't wait, they just let him go. And so, here's every sign. And what, the first thing he did, now in hindsight, I look back and I see, okay, yes, he was on that track, because he ended up traveling to New York. He told me he was going to visit a friend, and he completed the suicide there.
Mhm.
So, only 2 weeks later. So here we are with somebody who was clearly, on the verge, of doing this, and with a team of professionals in the hospital who let him go and took him for his word. And so it's like, wow, okay, that happened. Where are the gaps? What else is needed? Where, where do all the different systems and the providers also need to work together?
Mhm.
to be consulting to save this human being's life. And I know my story is not a unique one. Many people have very similar experiences.
Mm. And that is true. A lot of people. That's my also same thing experience, that person who is on a suicide track, they will give you answer because once they are in medical system or mental health, they know exactly what we are gonna ask. And so
Mhm.
we should go beyond that always to see what is there. So if they're kind of rhyming up same thing, that means that they are not really telling the truth, and they could be anything,
Yeah.
or maybe that's the truth. And that is another problem. Yes, and then we can be, for our documentation or whatever, in our comfort level, we say, okay, that person is safe, and but unfortunately, that person has an alternative motive, and they are the people who commit suicide are very smart persons.
Yes.
They are extremely smart, and they will kind of do things or tell you things exactly what you want to hear. So that's sad, very very sad, that
Yeah. Yeah.
human brain is very complicated to understand.
Yeah.
But I think you're absolutely right, we can all learn from this, and maybe pay a little extra attention to that. If everything looks perfect, then this probably they are not perfect. So it's
Yeah.
there something is really hiding, and so also tell us about and now how is it in Canada right now? With I'm sure with this COVID also it didn't help a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah. We have been pretty lucky. It hasn't impacted us in the same way that it has impacted the US.
Mm.
Um, so we are opening things up, but numbers are now starting to grow because kids have gone back to school, and so there's still so much fear. And and this is the thing, like even with kids going back to school, there's stress for the teachers, there's stress for the parents, for the family members who might be more vulnerable with their health. So it's still it's quite high. I know that our government is increasing the funding for health, mental health care,
Mm.
but it's I feel like it's a band-aid solution, and is it enough? And when you look at the amount and you think about, we didn't have enough funding for the people that we knew beforehand who had mental health challenges. So what's going to happen now? I think we really like globally, we all need to be looking at that, just as much as we're looking at the COVID testing. I think that we need some form of mental health testing, and just checking in, not just leaving people to find your own way. It's we need to be checking up on people so much more. And it takes me back to even thinking about when my husband was released from the hospital. There was no follow-up for me. There was no guidance on, this is what you need to look out for, this is what you need to do. It was like, okay, he's out, we're done. And so I think that there needs to be a lot more follow-up, and particularly right now for people who are calling in, because there are so many helplines.
Mhm.
Who's following up with these people? Who's checking in on them? Like if they came to a point where they are making calls and asking for help,
Mhm.
that one phone call is not enough.
Yeah, yeah.
So we need better systems to be checking in on each other. Maybe it's making sure before that person gets off the phone call, like, give me the name and numbers of who you can reach out to for
Mhm.
support, because we know that support is such a big piece of maintaining our mental health. And having that connection and not feeling isolated does so much for us. While the brain chemistry is doing one thing, but the connection piece is so important.
And that is true. So it all comes down to education. we can certainly not, hopefully we can eliminate as much as we can, but it's a lot of work has to be done.
Hmm.
Education is big, realization, sharing, and those are a big thing. Education on dementia, psychosis, depression, and what are the factors that makes it worse. By the way, sleep is big one of them. So those are such important. I'm glad there are more studies now happening, more treatment. We have
Yeah.
for severe depression. Now we have used to have ECT only. Now we have TMS also. We have other medications, really good medications, which is great. But I think still comes down to, like you said, when they're discharged from hospital, they probably do better job follow up, and some kind of more communication,
Hmm.
more channels, more awareness. And I am puzzled usually by when we do, the whole reason we start doing these kind of programs is that um, there is a bubble which we all have as a health professionals. We think, oh, it is so easy, but it is not easy for somebody else, and they have zero clue about what we even say or what we even think. And that is sad. There is still a big difference between how we think or what we think. I mean, you and me, we can have discussion now. You know a lot about mental health, then we can discuss for hours. But if you ask still outside, they have no clue at all. You
Yeah.
know, so that is sad. There is still a big gap. So I think if what you have done is excellent. Coming up and educating, and I think it's gonna carry a lot of good stuff around, and it will make a lot of lives, save a lot of lives, and I think you're doing excellent work with that.
Thank you. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
yeah, keep it up. So those are definitely gonna help all of us. Thank you for coming, and any final thoughts you would like to share before we say bye?
I think the only thing I can offer, and to people out there, that if you are struggling in any way, reach out to whoever you can. There are so many people out there that want to help. And again, going back to social media, which I know this is being streamed across it. Right now there are so many support groups online. Like everything is online right now, so we don't even have to leave our home.
Yeah.
But there is access to so many groups, whether they're formal or informal. But do reach out. Don't feel like this is something that you need to do alone,
Mhm.
because people out there do want to hear from you, do care, and do want to support you.
Okay, great. Yes, and that is so true that there are support group, but they're still, I say, they still keep working on that, and I think we'll definitely help each other and make better place. Thank you for coming out and bringing this such an important topic to all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.